This episode of the Central Valley Music Educators podcast is sponsored by J.H. Tackett Marketing in Hanford. They offer worldwide printing at your fingertips. Find out more at jhtacketmarketing.com.
Welcome to the Central Valley Music Educators Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Bentley. Be sure to follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube, or wherever you download your favorite shows. You can also listen on our website at cvmepodcast.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Chris Riddington from Classic Charter. How's it going, Chris?
Good, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing great. As a band director, I've had the opportunity to take my students on so many trips near and far on Classic Charter. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of Classic Charter?
Yeah, short history. Classic Charter started in 1985 with my father, Les Riddington, and we started with 3 buses, and now we have just around 40 coaches and pre-pandemic around 80 employees, and it's kind of from 85 to 2022.
One of the things that I like working with Classic is that your office staff is always so kind and patient whenever I'm trying to set up a trip. Is there anyone in the office or in the shop you'd like to give a special shout out?
Yeah, our office staff, we have 3 currently in our front office, and Lizette Razzo is our charter manager. She's done a great job for probably, I think, 10, 12 years for us. We used to have a lady, Louise Villagrana. She passed a few years ago, and she was great in our front office. Then also we pretty much have 4 departments here: our front office, our maintenance division, our operations and dispatch, which is usually really busy, and then our cleaning department, which is something that we have to do every night. So yeah, all of our guys are good. All my managers, I have about 10 managers. They've all been with us for 10 or plus years, and really good people, know the business, and keep on pushing in the right direction.
On a recent trip, your driver Robert told me that Classic has been able to upgrade the fleet of available coaches before the pandemic, and then we moved into the pandemic, and I've seen some new buses on the road. Can you tell me about your new equipment?
Yeah, so we've always tried to upgrade our equipment, and we were able to do a large upgrade. In 2018, we bought 4 new coaches, brand new, and then 2019 in September, which is about 6 months before the pandemic, we bought 7 new coaches, which were a little bit different than what we usually have been purchasing. We've been purchasing a lot of larger coaches, which 58, 56 passengers. This purchase we did we did 7 40 passengers, which was good for a lot of smaller groups. We had a lot of teachers that wanted smaller, didn't need the bigger coaches. So we're able to buy 7 of those in September 2019. Ran for about 6 months pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and they were sitting for a bit.
So speaking to the pandemic, like so many other companies, I know Classic Charter probably experienced some tough times there. How are you doing now on the recovery for recruiting new drivers and such?
Yeah, so it was a hit for our entire industry of charter buses from Florida to California. I'm part of the California Bus Association, and I was just at a meeting, and I think the operators went from about 3,000 in the United Motor Coach Association to about 1,500. So it took a huge hit. My computer just started filling up with cancellations, and we ended up going from fully booked in March, getting into that school season where everybody's traveling, to 0, no vehicles out at all. So we went from 80 employees to 1 employee, which was Lizette in my front office. And we would do a trip here and there, as they came in, but as you know, everything shut down. So we started to come back last year, 2021. Things started to pick up. Schools started to travel a little bit more. Everybody kind of wanted to get out. And in 2022, school started 22-23 season, and things are going good. We were running 40 pre-pandemic. We're back up to running a 22. Hiring drivers in our industry is the biggest challenge we've all had. I was at a bus association, California, in October, and it's across the board. Drivers left to the trucking industry, or drivers left to out of state to fulfill other dreams. and some of them just left California. Some of them left the industry altogether. So we're all kind of coming back from that. It's a little bit harder than we thought it would be, but we have a trainer here at Classic, and we have a hiring and recruiter that's out there, trying to get us good professional drivers, which are hard to find. They're not something that just grow on trees, and they have to be they have to have a certain amount of experience. They have to be a certain age, and they have to be safe and professional. So it's an upward battle, but whatever hand you're dealt, you got to play it. So that's what we're doing.
So what kind of training, if someone was interested in becoming a bus driver, what kind of training would they need to have, and what are some of the qualifications?
So we do actually train from the bottom up here. So somebody could walk in with a Class C, and with our insurance, if we got an okay from our insurance company, we could do it. We have a full training program, and from stem to stern, a Class C driver would take probably about 3 weeks of training. We basically start in classroom, which is about 20 hours of getting all those items done, and then we do 20 hours plus behind the wheel, and then we have a mentorship, and they start driving, and they'll start on multiple bus runs and things like that. So it's all done through the California Department of Education. We have to have a certified trainer here come in, train, do the 40 hours behind the wheel, and then we have our guys here that are trainers that do our specific classic charter training to motor coaches and those type of things. So our drivers get what's called a SPAB certification, SPAB, which is School Pupil Activity Bus. It's a lot like a driver would get driving a school bus. Theirs is called a school bus license. Ours is called a SPAB license. So, but anywhere 2 to 3 weeks, we can get somebody trained if they continue to progress to where we think they need to be and drive a charter bus.
So you bring up a good point in the qualifications for driving students. I know that when I've been on trips, our director of maintenance and transportation would come and check the driver's record. So you're saying that the drivers for Classic Charter are specifically trained, if they're going to be taking a school group, that they're trained through a Department of Education qualifications to be able to do that?
Yes. So the Department of Education has certified trainees come out of Sacramento, and those are the ones that would train our drivers initially, and then every year they have to get 10 years of certified training from a Department of Education certified trainer. And then they have, from there, there's physicals they have to do every year. There's that 10 hours of training they have to have as continuing education. And then they have to, meet certain qualifications, of course, through DMV and our insurance companies.
All right. Well, I know the driver issue is huge, and I'm sure this next question is going to be something that our directors are going to want to know. One of the questions that always comes up is the amount of time that the drivers are able to work on the clock and off the clock. I know that I've done some Disneyland runs, and we've had to stay at the park longer. It's for us, it's about a 4.5, 5 hour trip on traffic. Things like that can really play into an itinerary. So what are some things that directors should keep in mind when they plan a trip a little farther away?
Yeah, so one of the most important things on a SPAB trip, on the hours of service, we call it HOS, is that a driver from start to finish can't go longer than a 16-hour day. So if that driver started, say, needed to pick up in Hanford, and they started in Visalia at 5 a.m., once they, I guess you could call it, clock in at 5 a.m., they have 16 hours. So they need to be clocked out off of their trip at 9 p.m. So 16 hours is the big number. And then from there, it kind of clicks down. The next thing that we would look at is they cannot do more than 10 hours of driving in that 16 hours. So that's usually around 500 miles. So that's kind of what we look at. Hey, if a trip starts getting over 500, we got, where are we going? What are we looking at? You had mentioned, if we're going to a 500-mile trip to San Francisco, that is going to be possibly tighter than 10 hours just because of traffic. So we're always thinking of traffic and then looking at that 16-hour rule. So as a director, you're just saying, hey, we want to go from here to there. Can we get it done in 16 hours? The great thing that we've been able to accomplish is that we'll sometimes use two drivers. So we'll have, like, let's say picking up in Hanford at 5 a.m., we'll have that driver drive Hanford and then take you, say, to Valencia or Pismo Beach, wherever you may go. And if it does go over 16, we can send another driver out later in the day, what we call a cutoff or a relay, and to take over for the trip, and the other driver would come home in a company vehicle. So these days it's a little harder with the driver shortage, but if a director can give us their itinerary, then we usually can fit it into all the legal ramifications.
That's really good to know. I know planning trips is difficult on everybody, and having that information is certainly going to help a lot of directors. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here, and I want you to think about this for a minute.
Sure.
So there's always an adventure. There's always something that happens. A bus breaks down. There's a traffic issue. What are some things, what's a funny story maybe that you can think of that you just left you shaking your head and can't believe that happened?
Well, I have a funny story. This is an old one. This is a really, really old one. And this is probably back around 2000. We had an older gentleman. He was a retired farmer, and he was driving for us. He was a great driver, but he would get flustered sometimes. And he's on a trip going to, for a travel agency. They're taking a cruise down to San Pedro going to the port. And he made a couple wrong turns and got flustered. And the group was on the phone with myself at the time, and they're like, "Hey, what's going to happen if we don't get on this cruise ship?" And I'm like, "We're going to get on the cruise ship." And so we were actually talking. They were talking to the cruise captain. We were talking to the cruise ship industry. We're talking to our driver, trying to help him through. And this is before back Google Maps, and we had these old map books, and we're telling the driver where to turn, and he's getting flustered. And long story short, he got him there. Everybody was waiting for the bus. The bus pulled up, I guess, and everybody jumps out of the bus, and they go up this cruise ship bridge, and they were the last ones on, and our driver got him there, good old farmer guy. But that was a little bit of a crazy, stressful situation of having 40 people, needing to get on a boat.
I'm sure we could probably do a whole episode on stories. So I've got one that I'm actually going to share with you off camera. Hey, Chris, well, that was some great information. I know that I'm looking for just some great trips with you guys. Can you tell our listeners how to get a hold of Classic Charter if they're interested in a charter bus trip?
Yeah, we're available all the time on the internet. You can hit us on our website at classiccharter.com. You can always give us a call at 877-687-2345 and look forward to hearing from you. We appreciate all the band directors. I was in a band, actually. I played Redwood High School Jazz Band, and I went to COS before my dad passed and played the saxophone. So the band was one of the great things that I got to do in high school. And we talked. I played in the Reno Jazz Festival, and just a great event. And I appreciate all the hard work that the band directors put into their students and their bands.
I'd like to thank J.H. Tackett Marketing in Hanford for sponsoring this episode of the Central Valley Music Educators Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a review, sharing on social media, or telling a friend. For more information about the podcast, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Central Valley Music Educators Podcast or CVME Podcast. It's hard to believe that Season 2 is coming to a close already. Our final episode of 2022 is one that nobody is going to want to miss. I have the amazing opportunity to sit down with Susan Burley to chat about her career as a music educator. That episode will premiere on Tuesday, December 13th. After that, we'll pick up the podcast back with Season 3 beginning on January 13th. Good luck with your upcoming concerts and have a great week.